What up, perps? So we're back for another one today, and I don't know how many I'll film today. Like I said, earlier I've got to go out and do some work for some folks in a little while. Um, but what we're going through now, what we're going to look at now is S770 and HB 2707, which is the handgun licensing program. Um, what can I say, man? It just keeps getting dumber and dumber and dumber. And this rabbit hole keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. So let's roll into this one. Snatch this thing up here. And since this doesn't this edits an omnibus crime bill, but I didn't pull up the text of it because we'll be able to read it all in one shot. Now, the cut for this one, and this is shiny and the sun's killing me, that if you license a right, it's not really a right. I hate how it flips everything around, but yeah, if you license a right, it's not really a right, is it? Let's go to voting rights. If you have to pass a set of requirements and get a license to vote, is voting really a right? If you have to pass requirements and pay a fee to vote, is voting really a right? Why people can't think of that logic when it comes to firearms, I really have no idea. Because when you break it down, voting for certain things has killed way more people than firearms ever will. That's just a absolute fact. So let's get into this one. Remember, this is a Senate bill. The House companion to this is the same way. So this was introduced into the Senate on 3/16/2021. I believe the House bill was right about the same time. A lot of times when these are introduced in the House and Senate, they'll be introduced pretty much at the same time. This is just a little out of order from the other bills, like I said on the last video. I can't remember why it got switched in the rotation. Just me, I guess. Hey, deal with it. Live in my brain for a little while. Trust me, you don't want to do that. It's fucking scary. Be like Joe Biden and whisper. Only, I don't go around sniffing children unless I fear my son might have a dirty diaper, and then that sniff at your own risk at that point. Yeah. Okay. Now, this is to authorize a grant program for handgun licensing programs and for other purposes. Now, be this a grant program, you have to remember, go back into a couple of my previous videos where there have been bills introduced, and he is getting annoying. There have been bills introduced that would make this a federal law where you had to be licensed to carry a handgun. This was introduced by Van Holland in the Senate, of course, signed on to by Mr. Richard Dick Blumenthal and Pat Murphy. And I believe this has picked up some other co-sponsors. To authorize a grant program for handgun licensing programs and for other purposes, being enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives, the United States Congress, assembled. Act may be cited as a handgun licensing act. Findings, here we go with the findings. Congress finds as follows. 91.3% of firearms homicides in the United States in which a firearm type was specified were committed with a handgun. So why do you want to go after rifles all the time or long guns? Hmm. Research by top national experts. Oh boy, I would like to debate these experts. Show that adoption of handgun purchaser licensing laws are associated with significant reductions in firearm related homicides. That is absolute horseshit. And repeal of handgun purchaser licensing laws are associated with significant increases in firearms related homicides. Again, another flat out fallacy, falsity, lie, horseshit. Let's play word association. Um, yeah, break out the thesaurus. All right. Research on efforts of the adoption of handgun purchaser licensing law in Connecticut in 1995, showed a 27.8% reduction in the rate of firearms homicide. That is another absolute fallacy. A lot of what was going on in 95 were a lot of other crime reduction efforts because we were coming out of or still dealing with a epidemic of crime linked to the narco economy surrounding crack cocaine. A 27.8% reduction in the rate of firearms homicide, and a 32.8% reduction in firearm suicide rates. Again, an absolute fallacy. Would you get off my lap? You're killing me. Anybody want a cat? I'll auction them off. Go. You're killing me. Go. Okay. Some other things that were happening around that same time is a lot of people's lives were improving. Thus, there was a national reduction in suicides. Funny how they can claim this. I got a cat all wrapped around my stuff. Go away! You're a nuisance. He's just purring. Go. No, go. I'm trying to do something.
Picked up a dead one.
Go in there. Okay. Let's see. Published research shows that the repeal of handgun purchaser licensing laws in Missouri in 2007 was associated with a 47.3% increase in the rate of firearms homicide and a 23.5% increase in firearm suicide rates. Again, there's a reason they try to break these things down and show something that are two completely unrelated areas, because a lot of these increases and decreases were driven by a very local either crime rate in a city or something along those lines. If you went back and you looked at a bunch of other cities around that time, you could probably see very similar rises in those rates. But they're full of shit, and they're not going to show you things like that. All right. In states that had effective handgun purchaser licensing laws for decades, such as Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, the vast majority of firearms traced to crimes originated in states that do not have handgun licensure program purchaser laws, which supports the need for handgun purchaser licensing laws in every state. You know, if I have very lax purchasing laws in my state, and my state does not see a rise in crime, murder rates, all that. However, a firearm travels to another state and they see a rise in things. Why don't you focus on stuff in that state and figure out why people are killing each other? You bunch of idiots. The people, okay, when you do research, and this is one of my gripes about things. Um, when you do research, if you come into that research with a preconceived notion, every bit of data that you feed into that research is going to prove that preconceived notion. That's just the way research works. If you put garbage into the research, you are going to get garbage out of said research. Hence, global warming or climate change. Uh, it's the reason that statistics are so skewed on things, systems like the CDC system. Um, and I shot a video about that not too long back. It's the reason they lump suicides in with firearms deaths. It's the reason when they talk about children getting killed, the age rates that they use in a lot of situations will include a lot of young men that are not children that are out actually shooting each other, performing drive-bys, and things like that. And they try to add these same kids into statistics where a young child innocently um, finds a firearm and there is a discharge of a firearm and a young innocent child is killed. Um, if you haven't figured out yet, they play with this data to prove the points that they already want or already have packed into or boxed into their research. It's extremely intellectually dishonest. Um, and if you don't dig into the numbers and do some research for yourself, you could be easily fooled or swayed by research like this or researchers. Um, Much like any intellectual paper that you would have to write, there's a reason where they don't link to all of these studies and break the data down in these laws because they know their facts are bullshit. And they know that if they put the raw data out there, there would be idiots like me who would actually take the time to look at said raw data and would figure out that this big flaming pile of horseshit is not worth the paper that is printed on. Hell, it's not worth the amount of power my screen takes to actually um, bring this bill up. Yeah. Um, if you have to license a right, it is not a right. Much like driver's licenses, you do not have a right to drive a car, so they impose a license on it. Now, I would argue that point because you have the right to travel, and cars are the method of travel in recent history. So, yes, I am against said licensing. Um, I'm not a sovereign citizen, kids. I'm just a person who believes in freedom. If you take a tiger and he is born in a zoo, he knows nothing but that zoo. Um, if you take an animal and they're born in a cage, they know nothing but that cage. So it to them seems like a very normal thing. However, if you take a higher level chimpanzee like myself and you expose them to get out of everything, you expose them to rational, logical facts, they start to see said bars. So, that being that, let's get back into said bill. That's kind of my little rant, and I will go on one or two more by the time said bill is finished. Okay, in general, Title 1 of the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act of '68 is amended. And this is another omnibus bill that they passed to throw in a bunch of gun control and other BS. Much like the omnibus spending bill they just passed with the Violence Against Women Act in there. Again, most of us normal higher level thinking beings already know you don't get to just abuse women. We never really had to be told that. I never, any point in my life, remember my dad sitting me down and saying, "Son, now look, it is not okay to beat a woman or a girl. You can't use them for punching bags. You can't just come home pissed off and beat the brake shoes off of them. That's not nice." No, much like I never had to be told not to rape a woman. And I'm pretty sure that 99% of the men out there are pretty much the same way. This cat, would you go? I'm gonna lock you out of the room. You're annoying. Alright, get. Keep throwing him on the couch, keeps coming back. So, back to this. So, Part PP, Handgun Licensing Grant Program, Section 3061, definition. In this part, the term handgun has the meaning given in 921A United States Code. Remember, that is the section of definitions for 18 USC for firearms. Grant program. In general, the Attorney General may award grants to states, local units of government, Indian tribes for the development, implementation, and evaluation of handgun purchaser licensing requirements. Program authorized. From the amounts appropriated to carry out this part, and guess where they're going to get the money? And not later than 90 days after such amounts are appropriated, the Attorney General shall award grants on a competitive basis to eligible applicants whose applications are approved under Section C to assist such applicants in implementing and improving handgun purchaser licensing programs. Does anybody else need like a gumball dispenser full of Xanax so you can just, crank, get a handful out and pop them before you read this shit? Application. To be eligible to receive a grant under this part, a state, unit of local government, or Indian tribe shall submit to the Attorney General an application at such time, in such manner, and containing such information as the Attorney General may require, including a description of the law that the applicant has enacted to require a license for any purchase of a handgun, including a description of any exemptions to such law, and a description of how the applicant will use the grant to carry out or improve its handgun purchaser program. Eligibility requirements. To be eligible for a grant under this part, an applicant shall have, in effect, a handgun purchaser licensing law that includes the following requirements. With respect to an individual applying for a handgun licensing permit, the individual shall be not less than 21 years old. 21 years old. Let's scoot this back. We will give a 15 or 16-year-old the keys to a 3,000-pound battering ram and let them drive that son of a bitch at 70 miles an hour in traffic on an interstate. But for some reason, we think that someone of that age could not be properly trained to operate a handgun. Let that sink in. 70 miles an hour, and if they are like me, they're going to be doing well over 70 miles an hour in traffic, in some cases less than average car length behind another speeding vehicle, making lane changes, very fluid situations, but to put a firearm on their hip and realize that firearm is a tool, not to be just pulled at any moment for any damn reason. Especially thinking that in past situations, children as young or young people as young as 16 years of age have served the United States in military capacities. And we think even at 18, someone can't responsibly deal with firearms. We are absolutely failing our children in the United States and have been for a very long time. And it's absolutely sad. Uh, Anybody like researching antidepressants right now? Because I might be in a minute. All right. A citizen or national of the United States or an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence, as those terms are defined of the Immigration and Nationality Act, the individual shall apply for the handgun purchaser licensing or permit at a law enforcement agency in the state in which the individual resides, knowing good and damn well that a lot of these states will absolutely deny any permit for any reason. And that's what this is about, is to deny people the tools that they would use to defend themselves. The individual shall apply for the handgun license permit. Okay. The individual shall reapply for the handgun purchaser licensing or license or permit after a period of not longer than 5 years. The individual shall, in connection with the application for the handgun purchaser license or permit, submit to a background investigation, a criminal history check, as established by the state, which shall ensure, at a minimum, that the individual is not prohibited from possessing a firearm under Section 922G of 18 United States Code, and submit fingerprints and photographs. An individual who is prohibited from possessing a firearm under Section 922G of 18 United States Code may not be issued a handgun purchasing license or permit. No shit. If they are a prohibited possessor, they can't have the gun legally in the first place, which I would argue in a lot of cases is still absolute horseshit. If you are considered a safe enough individual to be walking the streets with the rest of us, none of your rights should be restricted. If you are proven to be a violent individual who is too dangerous to be out in society, then your ass shouldn't be out in society. Period. End of story. Yeah. Use of funds. Grant funds awarded under this part shall be used to improve the handgun purchaser licensing program of the grant recipient. Authorization of Appropriations, Section 1001A of the Omnibus Crime Control Safe Streets Act of 68 is amended by adding at the end the following. They are authorized to be appropriated such sums as necessary to carry out Part PP. I would suggest that PP means piss poor. But that's just me. Oh God, I don't know why I do this to myself. Are you guys starting to get a theme here? And understand this is again editing an omnibus bill that these jackasses rush through, so that they can sneak in any kind of BS gun control they want to sneak in. Now there's let's touch on something real fast, just because it popped into my head and it's the way my brain works. Um, Having an ID to vote is seen as an infringement because they say that poor people and minorities can't afford an ID and that would keep them from voting. What the hell do you think this would do? It would stop poor individuals from actually being able to carry firearms. Um, does anybody see an issue with this? Does anybody see an issue with the fact this is being pushed by the Democrat Party, and this will hurt mainly minorities because those people that have the money and time to do all this shit will just do it, and those that are working stiffs just trying to make it won't be able to do this. Um, yes, these idiots right here are the same people that say that merely having a ID such as a driver's license is an infringement on your right to vote because even though the state would give you a free license if you could not afford said license, um, that's an infringement. Licenses are good for a few years. They typically only cost $20 or so, I think. So they're saying that people can't come up with $20 within a couple of years to actually be able to afford said license. But they want to restrict your right with handguns. Somewhere there is a person typing furiously on a keyboard right now trying to do the math and go through the logic to make this actually reasonable. And they are probably typing up another gun control bill as we speak. Um, Someone needs to find said individual, take their keyboard from them, and beat them senseless with it. Uh, that's just my opinion. YouTube, it was a joke. Um, get over it. Yes, there are still things you can say that are funny, that are not cause for violence. Just kidding. But no, really. Uh, all right, man. I gotta get out of here. I gotta go take care of some stuff. It's another day. Uh, Probably gonna shoot a couple more things tonight. As far as videos, might actually shoot some other things tonight too. Um, you perps be cool. I'm out. I'm starting to have way too much fun with this shit. Y'all be cool.